In the last 2 decades, it's estimated that 90% of global conflict-related deaths have been civilians, with an astounding 80% of these civilians being women and children. According to UNICEF's seminal document, the 1996 State of the World's Children Report, an estimated 2 million children were killed and 6 million children injured or disabled in conflict in the decade previous to its publication. So although there's been an increased attention to the experiences and needs of children affected by war since its publication, children actually continue to be at risk and in need of protection during war. The changing nature of warfare is attributed to some of the changes we're noting in 20th century wars, whereby children are perhaps the most vulnerable commodity in warfare. These changes have been attributed to some of the codes of honor that have no longer exist in current warfares. Olaro Tunu, who used to be the UN Special Representative for Children in Armed Conflict, spoke at a conference at the University of Alberta in 2004. This conference was on war-affected children. And he built on this idea that wars not having codes of honor by referring to his own country, Uganda's concept of lapir. And lapir literally means cleanliness of a claim. He said that there used to be distinctions between those who took the risk of fighting, that is, warriors, and civilians. Civilians supported and honored the warriors, and in turn, warriors offered a degree of protection to unarmed groups, particularly the old, ill, women, and especially children. 20th century wars, however, are chaotic, with no rules or ethical codes, and civilians are the main targets. And this trend can be seen as far back as World War I, where 10% of those who were affected were civilians. By World War II, 50% were civilians. And by the late 20th century wars in Africa and the Balkans, 92% of those who were affected were civilians. Even more recently, last Thursday, that's August 28th, I was reading the Edmonton Journal, and there was an analysis on the current Third Gaza war between the Hamas and Israel. And this analysis was reviewing the last 50 days of conflicts and the devastation on the territory on both sides. On the part of Israel, 70 people had been killed, all but 6 of them soldiers. And during those 50 days, the economy had been set back, tourism season destroyed, and people traumatized for over that 50-day period. On the part of Palestinians, they've also paid dearly, with 2,143 people killed and nearly 500 of them children, in addition to major devastation to their 2 homes, over 100,000 Palestinians made homeless, and a huge impact to their own economy as well. UNICEF's most recent review of the 1996 document that I mentioned earlier reports continued risks and abuses of children in armed conflict, including sexual assault, abduction, forced participation in conflict, deprivation of food, basic health care, and education. So these reports underlie the need for increased understanding of the interplay of poverty, conflict, and discrimination in order to understand and respond to some of the consequences of war on children. What we begin to see that amongst changes in warfare, children have become both vulnerable as well as a valuable aspect of 21st century wars, both as targets and perpetrators. So as targets, children have been specifically singled as part of war's propaganda to ensure ethnic cleansing in some regions. In many societies, children symbolize what a community stands for and what they hope for their future. Specifically targeting children is a powerful tactic to dehumanize and destroy a society. So, for example, Rwandan radio broadcasts prior to the 1994 genocide often reminded Hutu killers not to forget the little ones in their attacks. Serb snipers during the Sarajevo siege in the 1990s deliberately shot children walking between their parents for the very same reasons. As perpetrators, children have been recruited and abducted to serve in wars. In Sierra Leone, between 1991 and 2001, 80% of fighters in the Revolutionary United Front were ages 7 to 14 years. In Liberia, Charles Taylor seized power of the country while leading a youth rebel army in the early 1990s, consisting of 70% of children. The Lord's Resistance Army in northern Uganda is well known for using young combatants as young as 5 years old. Kadogo, a Swahili term which is my first language, is the name given to child soldiers currently in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Kadogo literally means the little ones. Some other countries with documented use of child soldiers are Colombia, Mexico, El Salvador, Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, Sudan, Chechnya, Kosovo, and Bosnia. A question for you to reflect on is, are children who are recruited to fight in wars victims or perpetrators? Click on the link in Moodle to see some of the BBC's images of children struggling for rights in the context of wars before you end this session.